A lot of the times we don't necessarily associate ourselves as an individual with a brand, with a product, with something like that. When in reality, our LinkedIn, our social media, how we carry ourselves in person and virtually is that walking billboard, is how we advertise who we are, what we value, and really what we want to be doing.
Hello, everyone out there. Thank you for joining us tonight. Another edition of the Well-Rounded Student webinar series. And tonight we are going to be talking about the importance of building your personal brand. Now, just a little quick synopsis on that is many people don't really associate personal brands with themselves because they think of branding for companies or corporations, but you are your own walking billboard in many aspects. So that's what we are going to discuss tonight. So my name is Corey Andrew Powell, and my co-host Ali Randall, she has a rich background in higher education. She's in recruiting and marketing, and she has a really unique perspective on how to help students and organizations succeed. So hey there, Miss Ali, you joining us here tonight, and so good to see you.
Hello,
And
everyone.
yes, hello, everyone. And I am, as I mentioned, Corey, and I wear many hats. I'm a copywriter, content producer here at the NSLS, and I'm also the host of Motivational Mondays, our podcast. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. And it's a great source of inspiration, and it's a great time to hear wonderful conversations, people sharing leadership tips. So tune in if you've not done so yet. So we're going to be talking today about building your personal brand, and I'm going to go over the agenda. So we're going to move to that next slide so I can see what our agenda will be for today. Make sure we get you guys on track so you know exactly what we're going to cover. So we have what is a brand and how is it developed, and defining your mission, your vision, and your values, bringing it into your professional life, professional versus personal representation. And there is a difference because, when you're going out for a job interview, that's not the same as going out to the club with your friends. Okay. So we have to make sure we have a distinction of presentation for personal versus professional. And then also leaving a lasting impression. The first impression is often the lasting one. So you got to make sure you do that properly as well. And then we're going to end in a Q&A and a couple poll questions along the way. So that's our agenda. And without further ado, I will bring Ali and we'll begin.
Awesome. Well, as I said, so wonderful to be with you guys today. Happy Tuesday. Don't know about you guys, but I will be indulging in some Taco Tuesday later today. But with that being said, personal brands, right? That's what's on the menu currently. So with our personal brands, right? As Corey mentioned, a lot of the times we don't necessarily associate ourselves as an individual with a brand, with a product, with something like that. When in reality, our LinkedIn, our social media, how we carry ourselves in person and virtually is that walking billboard, is how we advertise who we are, what we value, and really what we want to be doing. So today, right, we're going to talk about personal branding and how you can bring your authentic self to your professional world, right? And really make that lasting impression in a positive way. So before we dive into all of this, let's do a quick poll. Get that poll question up there. All right. What worries you most when it comes to personal branding?
Right. That's a good question. That is a good question.
All right. Now for me, Corey, I don't know about you, but mine was really just finding the time to work on it. I was a non-traditional student, so I was already working full time. I was like, do I even need a personal brand? Yes, the answer is yes. So I was really carving out that time. That was really the most challenging thing for me. Corey, what for you? What's the most challenging thing for you?
Well, it's funny. Of course, my story. I was also a non-traditional student, went to college a little later. And I think there was a beauty in going later to college because at that point, I really knew who I was. So my personal brand had a lot to do with exactly who I knew I was, physically accepting everything about me. We all have our little inconsistent, what do you call it? are in, oh gosh, I'm lost.
Insecurities.
Thank you, insecurities, copywriter at a loss for words, but yeah, insecurities. And, and getting older means you start to embrace all those things. That becomes part of your personal brand because you own it and you walk
Mhm.
in and you're like, here I am, I'm ready to work. So that for me is
Yes.
what helped me later in life. Just self-acceptance was the biggie.
Yes, I love that. All right, let's see how these results came in. What did you guys have to say? So it looks like marketing, design, putting it out there. So really
Oh,
what you bring to the table, the aesthetic, the visual. Yeah, I think, Corey and I, we might be a little biased because we work in advertising and things that comes a little more naturally.
yeah.
But yes, I can definitely see how for the majority of people, that's really a challenge, is figuring out what visual do I want to bring? How do I take my personal self and
Mm,
bring that to the professional side and vice versa, right? How
yeah.
do we bring our authentic self in? And then of course, yes, finding the time to work on it, right? We make time for things that are important to us. That's how it
Mhm.
goes. There
Yeah,
we
yeah,
go.
yeah. That's very true. And I
Yes.
think again, there is that distinction. Someone mentioned here the marketing and designing and putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, what we're talking about, the it is you. It's not necessarily the work and the content. That's separate to how you would put that out. But your personal branding literally is what you're presenting as who you are, how you think, your aesthetic, what you're representing, even in the physical space when you walk into a room. What do you
Yeah.
want the perception to be, right, Allie? That's like a very different
Yes.
sort of marketing branding, if you will.
Yes, definitely. Right. There's a lot of different, versions of that. There was a comment Hannah said, what do you mean by that? Putting it out there. And as Corey mentioned, it's the way we walk into a room, how we're dressed. It can be your social media profile. It can be the language you use when you communicate. I know I have some signature words that I use when I'm interviewing, because they help me remember, quite frankly, what I'm doing and how to get through those meetings. Right. But we all have our signature things that we do, and it's just about taking the time to acknowledge them and figure out, do I want to bring that to the world, and how do I do so.
Mhm.
So with that being said, let's dive into personal branding 101, and talk about some of the key elements here.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover in this section, of course, what is a brand, right? We some of us might be able to think of some brands by name, right? But how do we define that? How do we develop a brand, right? What is the process in which it goes from an idea to having legs, right? Meaning that it can do lots of things, walk, take you places, serve multiple purposes. What story do we want to tell, right? What parts of our personal life are going to make their way to the front page, right? And what everyone else sees. And of course, what value do you bring? Right? We all have our unique values. How are you going to showcase those? So let's dive into these kind of one by one. So what is a brand? Well, the way I like to think about it is really a deliberate differentiation, right? That's kind of a mouthful. So deliberate, right? Let's break this down. Deliberate, right? With intention, to do it on purpose, to have meaning behind it. Differentiation, to stand out, to be different, right? To showcase what makes us unique. So being intentional about showcasing what makes us unique. Now, Corey, you and I, right? While we are both non-traditional students, our paths are very, very different, right? You're coming to us from the East Coast. I am in the Southwest, right? So even the lives we live on a day to day are very different, right? For a variety of other reasons as well. So when we think about that differentiation, right? How I showcase my differences, right? And those wonderful, unique things about me are going to be different in some ways than how you do so. And so when we think about that brand, what it means to be a brand, it is the way that are characteristics, story, and value that we share with the world,
Yeah.
right? So the question is, how is it developed? Right? Life experiences, are the influence of our parents or the adults in our lives, right? Social
Environment.
media, environment, right? Nature versus nurture. So many things are going to affect how we develop and the brand we want to put out there. So when we think about building that story or showcasing that story, we can think about the characteristics that we want to highlight. Now, for me, I like to showcase that I am friendly, that I would like to consider myself more of a timeless, classic type of person, especially with my personal aesthetic. I love a good capsule wardrobe, yes. Um, and I really think that I strive at least to be refined, right? In my professional life. Those are things in my personal world I like to bring to the forefront. Um, Corey,
Mm.
question for you. What characteristics in yourself do you purposely showcase professionally?
Well, my first job out of college, which was in my field in media, which I was so excited to land. I had decided at that point, for example, that I was going to walk in, and my hair, you guys don't see it right now, but like, if I were to really, blow it out, it's a lot, it's like 3 times the size. So, and I had grown into like just sort of like not being not cutting my hair out. Like I wanted it to grow. So it grew and grew and grew.
Mhm.
And then it came time for a job interview. And oddly enough, over the years, like I kind of branded myself accidentally as the guy with the hair. It made me stand out in auditions when I was auditioning for
Mhm.
TV. I was always, oh, the guy with the hair. Even the job interviews when I went for art director or copywriting gigs, the creative type, the hair, and I had funky glasses. I made sure that my aesthetic was very unique, looked quote unquote artsy, as I had envisioned what an artsy person looked like in New York City, how I had always
Mhm.
envisioned it or seen it in movies. And I wanted to be that because I think instantly when you walk into a room and you've automatically painted a picture for someone when they see you that, oh, this guy's he's got a little something going on. He's got a little flair happening. And so you're always selling in a way, but you have to be able to back it up though and be authentic, not just wear a costume,
Yes.
right? So for me,
Yes.
the hair, I wear hand tied bow ties specifically. I don't wear clip ons anymore. To me, there's a ritual in tying them, and people notice
Mhm.
when I come to work in them. So those things became part of who I am, and I've been
Mhm.
since I began my professional career. So I would say hair and bow tie for me are my two aesthetics.
Yes, yes. And if anyone wants to see that, check out Motivational Mondays. You can see it all there.
Yeah.
Yes. But that goes into the story that you want to tell, right? That you are creative, that you are a little out of the box, but you also know how to be polished and
Mhm.
present,
Yes.
right? It's that story that we want to tell. So, we have a lovely group of people here today. So excited that you guys are joining us. And as you guys are sitting here, I'm curious, drop in our chat. What are some of those characteristics that you value in yourself that you want to showcase to others? Right? What's part of that story that you guys are trying to tell to people? Right? This allows recruiters like myself, hiring managers to be able to see the value that you bring to the table, right? The part of this, the purpose of this series we're doing together is to prepare you guys in a unique way to go be adults, right? Adulting and go get those cool career jobs that you should be having fun with, right? It shouldn't just be a paycheck, right? So to do that, you want to bring your personal self into what you do. Right, being able to showcase those talents, those characteristics, super, super important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we look at when we look at how we can go about defining our brand, right? There's a few things that go into defining what it is, right?
Ah, yes, yes, yes. Like
Right?
the,
And
the
the
mission, right?
NSLS,
Right.
right? Well, NSLS, right? We have our mission, right? We have our vision and our values, right?
Mhm.
All of that fun stuff, and every company does. The fun thing about working here, right, and also as an individual, is we get to use those mission, vision, and values as cornerstones to guide what we do, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, Corey, how have you defined your brand and those mission, vision, values, those fun buzzwords?
Mhm. Yes. Well, here's something I want everyone to know when they go out to pursue their own career goals, that they really think about where they're landing professionally and if that place is aligned with who they are. So for me, part of my mission at this stage in my life was I want the place I go to work every day not to feel like work because I believe in what they're doing. I'm aligned with their vision. And so for me, the NSLS was this amazing, perfect alignment because we are really guiding people every day. We're sharing advice, information, good stuff like this. We're helping people in the world get out there and um, have it a little easier than maybe we did because we were kind of blindly trying to find it, so we can help them avoid some of those pitfalls. So for me, a mission-driven career means I'm aligned with the brand that I'm working for. And that means I've done some research to know before I even interview that I want to be there. Because if you're misaligned with, or if a brand is misaligned with your vision, then it's going to be a pretty rocky um, relationship, I would think. Just like personal relationships, if you're not in common with someone, it's not going to really work out well, right? So that's the, for me, that's how I define, like, the mission and philosophy part of pursuing your career in any field that you're looking to get into.
Mhm. Definitely. And I like what you kind of alluded to here, that it can be really challenging long term in a relationship, a professional relationship, if your mission and your vision and your values aren't aligned. Because there's, just like in our personal lives, there's going to be challenging things, right? Whether it's challenging within work or challenging in your personal life, and you have to be able to prevail professionally. And having an organization that aligns with your personal mission and values and vision, it makes some of the life journey a little bit more bearable and even enjoyable, right? You get that extra support system, which is invaluable. Um, when we look at some of these things, I see some things in the chat here, fun. So when we look at the mission, right? For me, one of my kind of personal missions is that I love helping people find their next big thing, right? In my personal life, that's probably like helping my sister-in-laws and I find like the next skincare thing or thing for the kitchen, right? And in my professional world, it's, I've had the joy and pleasure to be able to work within higher education and help students find bridges to their next big adventure. Right. And so finding those things, being that bridge is a huge value of mine. And I get to live that every day, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I agree. I mean, I
yeah.
don't, I don't want to harp on that too much, but I mean, it's really true. I mean, there's that old expression that says, if you find something that you do that you love, it won't feel like going to work. And so, that is how this feels. We get to really use all of our skills and all of our talent, and we help people discover about themselves things they didn't know, and we help them become the leaders that they thought they could be and we thought they could be, but then we kind of
Mhm.
amplify it and make them even stronger, better leaders who go out in the world and make the world a better
Mhm.
place. That's our mission. And so
Yeah.
yeah, all that is aligned with values, vision, and mission. And for all of you going out there looking for your career opportunities, research companies, make sure that they are
Mhm.
aligned with you first, because believe me, it's much easier to eliminate brands you don't want to work for, companies you don't want to work for or with,
Mhm.
then, it's much easier to weed those out. And then, it's smooth sailing to know who
Mhm.
is actually the company that might be right for you. So
Definitely.
that's what I'm sticking to that. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes. So looks like we have another poll question.
Yes, we do. Poll number 2.
Poll
Let's just
number
click to that one.
2.
Let's see what we got. So, yes, so poll number 2, we are asking, do hiring managers really care about personal branding? Do you guys think they really care or not? Let us know what you think. What do you think, Allie? I mean, I guess we have a certain,
Well,
I think I know what you're going to say.
well, yes, definitely. I can tell you, having interviewed thousands of college students at a variety of different types of campuses, um, your personal brand and how you present, especially in that first interview, whether it's virtually or in person, um, it speaks volumes. I've worked in very casual environments, right, where you could wear, athleisure wear, right, some leggings and a hoodie, and you're good to go. I've worked in the opposite end where it's full business professional, very traditional, right? And they need to dress the part, right? Your, again, mission, vision, values, that alignment, right? This should be easier. Um, as you go to interview, if you're aligned, right, you're going to feel more comfortable.
Mhm.
I've had students come through in that very traditional business environment and they show up wearing, the gym clothes,
Mm.
and everyone else is wearing, at minimum, dress pants and button down shirt, or, something in that direction. And it's like, okay, well, there's clearly a little bit of disalignment here, right? On alignment,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
right from the get-go. And then once I started having a conversation with that student, they realize, oh, wow, this is actually not the type of environment I want to be in. Or they realize they do want to be there. And they're like, ooh, I didn't do enough research. I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
But yes, it is very important,
And
in my opinion.
well, no, I agree. So we'll get to what the everyone out there in the virtual world thought as well in a minute. But I want to also share that when you make, and I say it's a mistake, when you make the mistake of not calculating what your personal aesthetic should be, you go into a job environment, as Ali said, and you can be perceived as looking inappropriate. That's a subjective word, I get it, but business attire has a range of possibilities, and going out with your girlfriends or your buddies at a club, that has its range of possibilities. Or going to the gym, that aesthetically has its possibilities. And you have to be really conscious to know what environment is appropriate when you need to dress the part. And the sad thing is, if you get that wrong, you do yourself a disservice, because you could be the most talented person for the job, the most talented person for the job, and it will go to someone else because of how you present it. So be very careful in that. But let's get to what you all thought about poll question number 2. Do hiring managers care about personal branding? And
Okay, interesting. I'm actually a little surprised with that. So somewhat.
somewhat.
Yeah, I as a hiring manager, I would disagree with that. And I think maybe some of the thought here is, when we think about a personal brand, it does not need to be like full branded, like at a branded experience or something where, your face is on everything and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It can just mean that if you want to be polished, that you're doing certain things that showcase that you are polished in that way. Or if you want to come across as creative, right, Corey? Like, you made sure that like you had that certain visual look, whether it was your clothes or your hairstyle.
Mhm.
So I think, as we think about what personal branding is, we don't need to be, volume all the way up all the time,
Right, right,
right? Right. It can be on a gradient, a gray scale,
right. Yeah. But I think
right?
I think what happens now, and I just had this conversation with my cousin who's in his mid 20s. He's like kind of mid 20s, still trying to find himself. Um, he really freaked me out because he's like explaining to me how he doesn't get dressed up for interviews that are on Zoom. And he kind of felt like it didn't matter because it was like, well, it's not really in person. I'm like, dude, they're seeing
It-
like this is your potential employer. You're seeing them
Mhm.
for the first time. So I think we need to also indicate, perhaps it's even more important not to fall into that trap right now, because so
Yes.
much is
Mhm.
virtual and you're
Mhm.
home, your pajamas are not an outfit for the office. So you need to step it
Yes,
up a little bit. Don't do that. And I think
definitely.
that people are falling into that trap because there's a blurred line between
Mhm.
professional and casual now, because we're home a lot,
Mhm.
most of us.
Definitely. Well, and a good comment came in from Darren in the chat here that it's about being yourself, right? Don't pretend to be someone else. So, your family member, right? Maybe they want a more casual work environment where being in a very, in your athletic wear or edging on pajamas might be appropriate. There are some industries, some companies that is totally okay,
Oh yeah,
right? There's others that it is not, right? Even though it is a virtual environment. And so I think that as we think about what we want personally, right, and those things, and how we can be ourselves, we also have to think about how that does show up professionally.
yeah.
So personal versus professional representation, right? Um, when we think about those things, right? Um, it feels maybe a little bit muddy, right? When you're like, oh my gosh, there are so many things that I like to do that are part of who I am. What feels appropriate to bring into the workplace, right? And again, the word appropriate is such that's so much discretion in that word, right? And so it's really, again, about, creating a personal mission statement for yourself, right? What do you believe? We
Mm,
all are going to have a very different mission statement. Then finding an organization that allows you to match or mirror those things as much as possible, right? By creating your aesthetic, right? I like to consider myself a little bit more that capsule wardrobe, traditional, um, maybe more of a plain and simple kind of aesthetic, right? My whole house is beige, not just my office, right? Right. That's part of my aesthetic, right? Corey, your aesthetic personally shows up differently in your home, right? I know you have some beautiful artwork throughout your home, right? That creativity, that art, that life, right? So how do you discover that aesthetic and bring it in? Associate who you're aligned with, and then constantly update and learn. Now, as I mentioned, right, I have a little more of that traditional, like old school, plain and simple aesthetic. Corey, very different, right? Both beautiful and unique in their own ways. Corey, I'm curious. I know the answer to this a little bit, but I'm curious. How do you bring your personal aesthetic into that professional world? And what are the things you're thinking about to make sure that it shows up with that intentionality that
Yeah.
you're focusing on?
Well, what's important for us to also talk about is we have been stressing a lot about the physical because that is sort of humans are just programmed to respond to what they see
Mm-hmm.
physically. So we have spent a lot of time talking about the personal aesthetic. So we've covered that enough, I think, visually. But what I
Mm-hmm.
also want to stress is that your personal brand, and for me, it also goes into my behavior. You know, um, I think I'm known whenever I work with people for certain attributes that are part of my brand. It is known that I'm highly collaborative. It is known that I'm not highly competitive, right? I believe that all our gifts are very uniquely different. So I'm not really worried about you stealing my thunder because your thunder is already fierce enough on your own. Your thunder is your thunder. Together, let's make a storm, right? That's how I live my life, and that's how I work with people. And so I think that is also part of what I bring to my personal branding. So highly collaborative, always respectful. I try to be a strong communicator, be it verbal or written. And I do try to also always think outside the box. I have my own personal slogan, which is some people think outside the box. I say, what box? That's pretty much that's literally on my
Love it.
website as
Yeah.
my like tagline. So I really
Yeah.
think that that's an
Mm-hmm.
important thing to remember, that your personal
Yeah.
brand is not just what you look like, it's all these other
Mm-hmm.
things that you're bringing to the job every day that people are
Mm-hmm.
going to expect you to be, which is why, as Darren says, don't pretend you're someone you're not, because don't show up looking like Anna Wintour just because she looks great. Show up like Anna
Yeah.
Wintour and also be an amazing badass fashion director as well.
Right.
That's the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when we want to, define the word aesthetic, right? To me, the word aesthetic, or to have an aesthetic, of course, there's a visual element, right? Put that on the shelf over here. But it's also the feel, what you remember, right? There's that saying that it's something like, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel, right? Something along those lines. And so when we think about those values that we want to exude, that we want to align with, how do we get those across, right? Whether it's, not just being on time, but being a little bit early, being a really good listener, having questions prepared, having done your research on an opportunity.
Mhm.
All of those things feed into your aesthetic and what you want to showcase.
Yeah.
Corey, I love that you pointed that out, because aesthetic does go beyond the visual, right?
Hmm.
It's really the whole experience that you're leaving somebody with.
Yes, absolutely. And gosh, so many different touch points we can cover with this topic. But I want to, before we forget, a question came in, so I want to present it to everyone, and we can share it because it's an interesting question that we haven't really examined yet, but I have a good answer for it. So Nishi Akhtar wrote in and said, for college students, are there any other ways to make your personal brand stand out besides LinkedIn? Now, that's an important thing to talk about because so many people are afraid of LinkedIn. We've had this conversation. Especially young college age people, we sort of think that's like an older person's place, it's a business place. But LinkedIn, actually, based on professionals we've spoken to who are like Gen Z and like millennial LinkedIn professionals who are like killing it in that world, LinkedIn is actually the place I would recommend you go to build your personal brand. Yes, there are other spots, but I just want to make sure I just stress that the LinkedIn is a place where a lot of you are not, and you should be. It allows you to create profile, share your life, right? Video. The same thing you do on Facebook, just less pictures of your cat, less pictures of your food,
Mhm.
more about who you are, because who you are, your
Mhm.
personal brand is a great place to be showcased on LinkedIn. So just want to make sure I got that in
Yes.
before we forgot that question came up. So
Mhm. Yes. Well, and on that point too, right? Associating with people that you're aligned with, right? Whether that's values or that you think the industry is cool or they have a fun product, right? Whatever that alignment is, LinkedIn is a really good place to not only find those people, but
mm,
also connect with them professionally,
oh yes.
right? I know that, to your point, Corey, like on our personal social media, right? We're going to have a certain vibe or style or showcase certain things. I'm always about like, look what I'm baking or look what my adorable child is doing, right?
Right, right.
Whereas on LinkedIn, I'm like, hey, check out this leadership article, or hey, have you guys seen these trends within the great resignation of the workplace changing? Right. So I'm posting more things along that nature. Right. And you can do both, right? You can showcase those sides of you, right? I do follow certain like personal favorites on LinkedIn, but I get to see a different side of them. So it definitely allows you in a virtual space and potentially a physical space as well, depending on what you're looking for, but finding those brands, those people, those companies that you want to surround yourself with so that you can constantly be learning, right? And
Mhm,
pushing yourself to that next space.
absolutely.
Um, definitely. Um, so let's see here. Do we have, I thought I saw a question in the chat. No, I got
Let's
distracted.
see. I know we had so many.
Squirrel.
There's some great comments coming through, though. I'm glad that everyone. I'm glad that people have some great responses. We definitely
Yes.
appreciate that. So because we want you guys to go out there and be your best selves as you go land those dream jobs. That's our mission. That's our mission.
Yes, definitely. Well, so as we, kind of wrap this up, right? We talked a lot about the different elements of personal style, not just the physical, right? But what's beyond that goes into your values of your style, and your goals. Um, I'm curious, Corey, like how have you, if there are a few things you focused on in that digital space, right? You mentioned you have a website, right? I
Mhm.
know you're on LinkedIn, right? But you're also, kind of the face in a way of our company, right, on social media. So how has that shown up with your personal representation versus the company and that authenticity that I will say is one thing you are known for with your
Thank
wonderful attributes? Yes.
thank you. Again, I'm glad you brought this up too, because it's something that we really weren't prepared to speak about. But I think it's important to say, because we're talking now a little bit about social media. And social media has been with us for a couple decades now, really. But in the beginning, it was like a wild, wild west. And like you could say anything and do anything, and you would have to say awful things to people and fights and arguments, and not realize that it's going to be there forever because it's the internet, because we didn't really know what the internet was like at the time. And so what I think is really important to remember now is that you should put nothing anyway, I think, on social media that you wouldn't, show your mama, basically, is what I say. But especially on LinkedIn, but across all platforms, your lives are so exposed on social media, and they can be very easily revealed by a potential employer. And they look for that. I'm telling you, a lot of employers, they look to see what you're doing when you come in for a job
Mhm.
interview. They are potentially
Mhm.
looking at all you're doing. So what I just say, part of your personal branding is to be consistently a person who keeps it above board at all times on social media, no matter what platform, because you don't want things you've done or said to come back in the end and do you a disservice, right? And it can be misconstrued, it can be taken out of context, or you could have just been a jerk that day. All those things are possible. But you
Mhm.
got to be very careful on social media, because that is also part of your personal brand. They see you acting a certain way on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, they may think that's who you are. So for me, that's the biggest lesson for me. I'm just like, I've learned how to communicate on social media. I've learned how to
Mhm.
have spirited debates on social media without insult and
Mhm.
vulgarities, and believe me, it takes a little practice. and restraint. but
Mhm.
but that's really important because as you're a professional, you don't want things like that from a bad day coming back
Mhm.
to haunt you when you're trying to get a job. So be very
Definitely.
careful on social media.
Yes, one, just that intentionality, or we've been using that word through our conversation. It's just being intentional about what you want to share, about who you are, and not just in the online digital sense, right? But really who you are, your values, and all of those things. And again, letting those values come through in your interactions in a virtual space. I know sometimes with those Facebook memories, I'm like, oh gosh, like why did we post that? Like, why
Yeah, I'm
did we
like,
feel the need
oh,
to like
Zuckerberg, no.
emotionally share that day, right?
Yeah.
Good times. Right. But so seeing yourself from the eye of employer, I can tell you as again, as a hiring manager, we do look at these things. Um, I understand that we're human beings, right? I do a lot of work with, college students. They're still learning the rules of the wild, wild west, right?
Hmm.
So I do give a little bit of a grain of salt, but
Yeah.
not most employers do. So just being intentional around that space, and just again, leaving that lasting impression. Right. So to kind of wrap us up here, is and how to leave that lasting impression, whether it's the social media, how we interact, what we're posting, that digital footprint that we're
Hmm.
leaving behind, and how we showcase our own mission, vision, values. All right. For me, right, I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about leadership and about helping people develop. You will see all of that in my digital footprint. Right. You'll also see that I like to have fun and that kind of stuff. But right, I'm very intentional about what memory I leave with people. Right.
Hmm.
And so a couple of things with leaving that lasting impression. Again, there's um the digital footprint, right? There's also a few things we've talked about before, Corey, some of um the old school rules as far as sending a thank you note,
Yes,
right? Or
handwritten.
handwritten thank you note. That's a very nice touch. I
Hmm.
love those. An email or a voicemail will also suffice, but it's just taking that, right? What's that lasting impression? How can you showcase your personal values with those little touches through the interview process? And hopefully, once you become an employee, right, or a business owner.
Hmm.
Um, Couple of other tips I would say is when we're looking at our social media, when we're looking at our resume, having all of those things aligned. So, whatever that brand is that you land on, whether it's a physical aesthetic, whether it's a spiritual or philosophical aesthetic, making sure that that is consistent across all the platforms that employers are going to be seeing you on. So, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, resume, business card, voicemail. Please set up
Hmm.
your voicemails, please.
Yeah.
Um, right, so making sure that all of those things are consistent. Corey, you have a lot of different platforms that you're on.
Yeah.
Any kind of tips there as far as consistency goes to leave that impression?
Yes. Yes. Well, I think what's really important is, and I think Darren, again, I'm going to quote Darren Goodwin, who's made a comment earlier, is not pretending to be someone you're not. So I'm pretty much the same guy. I'm a singer songwriter, but I'm also a copywriter and content producer. I'm also a podcast host. And that guy is the same guy. He loves to wear bow ties. He's got the crazy hair. And I pretty much wanted people to experience that across all the platforms, but more or less professionally, you could see that I'm the same person. And that serves me for many purposes, which is it can be people who just want to follow me from a social standpoint, or brands look across all my platforms and can say, well, he's pretty consistently the same person, which we were talking about, right? The personal brand, and they
Mhm.
can see who I am. I'm not, you know, biting the heads off chickens in the moonlight on this site and then over here buttoned up like I'm going to church, right? I'm the same guy across
Mhm.
all platforms. So I think for me, I have a commonality visually between all my platforms. So you can see a nice consistent association between who I am on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, my LinkedIn. Now my
Mhm.
photos, we have our bios are now here on the site for the NSLS, so people can see who we
Mhm.
are. You see the guy
Mhm.
with the hair and the bow ties, consistent, so really
Mhm.
just about consistency. That's the main thing that I've developed, I think, in my web presence is a good, consistent presence across all my platforms.
Mhm. Love that. And, to wrap this up, how does that set you apart? Well, I can tell you consistency does set you apart from your peers. It is discipline, it is intentionality, it is work to be consistent, but it is something that will serve you so well personally and professionally. And that I know as a hiring manager, I look for that. It's so, so crucial. So consistency is key, right?
Mhm.
Progress, not perfection. All the fun cliche sayings. All right, so it looks like we have, we're wrapping up here. I think we have time for maybe one question. I think we have time for one question. Sound about right?
Yeah, I think we
All right.
can get a Q. Anyone have any Q&A questions for us out there?
Looks like Darren had one.
We love Darren. Because
Yes,
Darren has a lot of good questions. Okay.
I love it.
Let's see. So Darren says, what is a good way to start networking without being so obvious? That is a great one. Building relationships
Great question.
in my community, maybe.
Mhm.
Well, Ali, I'll take a quick stab at this and then
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. Networking is such a big, big thing that we stress at the NSLS to our community. And, just being able to have to build a community of people who are like-minded, who have maybe the similar drive as you, or maybe even someone that has an opportunity that you might be able to get out of them. Be intentional in how you approach them. Don't be overbearing, but it's okay to be intentional with an email. We've had speakers just recently on our webinar series who say, go out, research people, blindly email them, but be intentional even in your subject line, because that will make a distinction in how they respond to you. Find commonalities. Maybe they went to the same school as you, or they're from your hometown, or you read something about them that resonated, that they know you're really serious about why you're asking to network with them, versus just running around a room giving out cards. Hey, I'm desperate. I'm desperate.
Yeah.
People can smell that desperation. So be
Yes.
intentional in your networking approach, and I think you'll be a lot more fruitful.
Yeah, and I'll kind of piggyback off of that, Corey, and kind of read between the lines a little bit is be more of a listener, right? When you're meeting with people, when you're at these networking events, or if you're looking at their social media pages, see what they already have going on, listen to what they're doing. You may have a resource or an opportunity that would be a benefit to them. You might also be interested in something that they have going on, and it's much easier to, conversationally be like, hey, I saw you post X, Y, and Z, or, oh, I heard you, sorry, eavesdropping, I heard you mention X, Y, and Z, I'm curious about that, tell me more, right? And it allows much more of that natural, organic interaction versus like, hello, I'm looking for opportunities, here's my business card. Right.
Yeah,
Which
no,
you
I
can
mean,
do it that way, but
no, I mean that works too, but it's almost like kind of, throwing up a bunch of business cards in the air and like hoping one lands in someone's pocket. Right. And they'll
right.
find it the next
Yeah.
day. It's a more of a shot in the dark, if you will. But
Yeah.
that's why we say to be intentional, research who you are going to network with, and if it's in person, literally just start conversations. I mean, that's also the old-fashioned way and more organic. And I know, like, gosh, we have like a couple of minutes, but someone just sent in another question, an anonymous attendee. And it's a really good question. Do we have time to maybe answer this last one?
Yes.
We have
Yeah, let's do this last one.
This is a good one. So the question says, has your personal brand ever sent the wrong message? And what did you do to fix this? That's an interesting question too, because as we're talking about first impressions, what I think, and I've never thought about a question like that. I mean, but what I think is, if you go into an environment as your authentic self, there was no wrong message. You're in the wrong environment. You know what I mean? So when you get to a point where you know what you know who you are, and you go into a room and you come correct, align with who you are and what you sell, what you're representing, who you can be. If that's not right for them, then it's the wrong place for you. So that's what I say. So the key is, go back again, examine who you are, and show up as your authentic self. And you're never going to leave the wrong impression. You just left the wrong impression for them.
Yes. Yes, to all of that.
Yeah.
All of that. Yes. Yes, that is a really great note to end on.
Yes.
I still see some really great questions coming in here. Please feel free to reach out to Corey or I, whether it's on social media
Mhm.
or through any of the communications you guys have gotten from us. Always happy to keep the chat coming or the conversation going. But to wrap us up
LinkedIn's a good one.
here,
Yeah, reach us
yes,
on
I
LinkedIn.
know.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yes, on LinkedIn, yes. But to wrap us up here, in the spirit of opportunities, right? And finding an institution, the organizations that you align with. If you guys are looking for internship opportunities, right? I know we're kind of in the middle of that summertime where you're like, school's out, I don't care, I just want to relax. I feel you guys. But you are looking for those opportunities. If you're just curious, please check out our internship opportunity. This is a paid remote opportunity that allows you to build skills that employers are looking for, whether that's communication, business management, budgeting, event management, all of the things that go into helping you be a confident professional version of yourself. This is what that internship is going to help you with. So if you are interested, please check out that link there. And please apply. Let us answer your questions if there are any. We'd love to talk to you guys about this and help bring the NSLS and content like you guys sat in on today to your peers and to your community. So
Yes.
with that, thank you guys so much, Corey. This is, as always, so much fun.
Yeah, so much fun, Ali. I love doing these with you, and I love bringing all this great information to the NSLS community. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and we'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye.